Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Halfwatt podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard. Today, I am privileged to have in the studio with me Anna Rachel. Anna?
Hello.
Hello. So if you don't know who she is an EST3 technician from Convergent. I have been waiting impatiently to have her on this podcast, so I'm super excited. Welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So tell me how you got started in this industry.
Well, I got started. I found out about Convergent Technologies, which is who I work for, through the career placement at ITT. Okay. I went to ITT and I got my degree for electronics and engineering through them. And then at the end, they helped me get interviews, and Convergent was one of them that I saw. And Mr. Mario Guidon was actually my interviewer and ultimately hired me.
Nice. When I know him. I took over the fire alarm class from Mario.
That's right.
Now, do you have a bachelor's?
No, I don't. I just have my associate's degree. Okay. I got hired on, and I basically hit the ground running doing test and inspect, and ultimately went through the apprenticeship program. So how long ago was that? Oh my gosh. Well, I got my license, I believe, in 2010. And when I entered the program, it was still a 4-year program, so 2006. And halfway through, they decided to make it the 3-year program by combining some classes, I believe. But the classes they combined, I had already taken, so I still had to go all 4 years.
Seriously?
Yeah, I did. So, but it was great. It was eye-opening.
So, and you've worked for Convergent basically the whole time?
The whole time.
And so you work on all the EST? Do you guys do twos and the
I
older
never
stuff
worked.
too?
I never went to school for two. I did work on some of them because they were end of life, I believe, before I even came into the industry. I started in 2005, and so I've done some programming, but I am certified in 3, and I've worked on the I/O panels and fireworks.
So you've done I/Os, twos.
Yes.
You're familiar with twos
Quick
and
starts.
quick starts and stuff.
Correct.
And all that. Have you worked on the 4 yet?
Not yet. I am actually going through the self-study for that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm excited.
So for those of you who aren't super familiar with fire, and I know I'm very fire-centric, EST3 is, I think, probably the toughest programming language to learn and to write. And so Anna represents sort of the top tier in folks who write. Now, I'm a simplex person, and that, simplex are big legacy systems, and but the programming language in simplex is pretty. It gives you a lot of variety to do, but it's a very easy program to figure out. It's not difficult. But when I see people write in 3, I have to step back and go, man, that is some complicated stuff.
It can definitely get very complicated very fast.
So now you work at one of those minor little places. Was that PDX or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Which is where we ran into each other.
Very few people know about it.
Very few. I hear it's a small little airport. So how long have you been working at the airport?
I started in 2019 with the PDX Next project,
Nice.
which is upgrading the old technology to the newer technology. And I've been there ever since.
Cool. And you work with Randy, who so Randy is a mutual friend of ours, Randy Clausen. He basically programs for performance systems, and you are doing the hardware installation. And what part of it are you doing?
We do the design and the parts and smarts, but PSI does the programming portion of it and the testing.
And to maintaining the
Correct.
aspects of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a split shop
It is,
thing.
yeah.
Is that working out pretty good? Or?
It is, yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
we have a good time.
You do. But you also go out and do service calls too still? You still do on-calls and things like that?
I do on-call, yeah. We have a rotation where, all the fire alarm technicians get a week. And so we kind of cycle through everybody. So I am on call every once in a while. So I do still get to do service calls, but primarily I'm pretty busy at the port.
And so you just basically hang out there and do that stuff. And you live in Vancouver, so that's an easy commute.
Yeah.
You don't have to
That's right.
to drive up from
No, that was one of my stipulations when we went house hunting a couple of years ago, is I wanted to stay close to the airport because for the first time in my life, I didn't have a big commute.
I bet.
And before I did the airport, it was all over the place. I mean, I've driven all the way out to Boardman. I've driven out to the coast, to do service calls, installs, things like that. So I've been all over the place. And so being close to home is nice.
I like that.
Yeah.
Do you have children and all that? Or?
No children. Just pets.
Just pets.
Just a dog and some cats.
Dog and some cats.
Yeah.
I have lots of those. No horses?
Not yet. No, I don't have the room for a horse, unfortunately.
Horses are...
they're nice.
They're fun. Like we've got a small horse we're training that's going to be auctioned off. Okay. It's part of the BLM Mustang thing. And so we're house sitting for some folks. And as I got home tonight, she was in the pasture next to us. And as I drove in, she was just running back and forth in the pasture just to exercise her legs. And it's like, man, here's this little horse that you wouldn't think has got all that power and strength. And, she's just showing off. What kind of dogs do you have?
I have, my dog, we have two dogs. One's my mom's, one's ours. She's a lab German short hair pointer mix. Nice. So she's got lots of energy, keeps us on our toes. And, normal house cats. My mom's dog is a little Chiweenie.
Oh, yeah.
Super
I got a
cute.
couple Chihuahuas.
Yeah.
And I've got a kind of a Bengal cat.
Oh, nice.
Those are interesting. They have a very distinct personality.
I hear they're super smart, too.
They're super smart. This one I have, his sister, who is no longer with us, too smart for her own good, used to open up drawers.
Oh, yeah?
The brother, the one that I kind of chose, he's a little denser than that, but he still brings us, cat-like surprises every once in a while.
Presents.
So with Mario, when Mario hired you and got you on board, did he just automatically just toss you into 3, or what was it like in this industry for you to start off? Like tell us about that, how that happened for you.
So when I was first hired on, I was actually hired on to be in a test and inspect group. Okay. So the very first system I actually ever saw and touched was a simplex panel, because we still made, we were able to test them and everything. But what got me into EST was an upgrade project in Tualatin, where I worked with Mr. Youngberg. Actually, he was my journeyman at the time. I was his apprentice. And so I worked with him out there. And then I also worked with him out at that other little place in Hillsboro that, just a little place.
A tiny little semiconductor plant out there.
That little place there. Yeah, exactly. So he was my mentor for a while there doing that stuff. And you couldn't learn from anybody. I mean, you had Mario on one side and Gary on the other. Yeah, between the two of them, I think I had the two best mentors I could ask for.
Wow.
So it was great. It was really eye-opening, and I fell in love with EST right then and there.
And why is that?
I've never, until EST, I'd never really dabbled in the kind of language that you need to use for EST, but I had played around with like HTML and things like that, which are stepping stones to kind of understanding how programming works in a way. You kind of get the gist of how you need to set things up and set up the rules and everything like that. And EST the language just clicked.
So I sent a guy off to 3 school, and he didn't know what to expect. And so he's in Arizona, and he calls me up, I think the second or third night. He goes, "This is C++. This is essentially C++." And he goes, "I've been writing C++ since I was a kid."
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "This is easy." I mean, easy for him, right? And I'm like, what the hell is C++? I have no idea. You know what I'm saying? I'm just not a programmer to that degree. I don't get it. And every time I've looked over like Bryce's shoulders, because Bryce was kind of my guy who turned me on to how the thing worked. Do you know Bryce?
I don't.
You ever heard of him?
I have heard of him. I've heard the name.
We're talking about Bryce Lackey.
Yeah, I've definitely heard the name.
So he's also been in EST all of his career. Like for the most part, he was a PSI apprentice. I knew him I had him as one of my students, and then when I managed him, I got to realize just what a brain he had on his head. And we would go through it, and I would watch him the way that he would work with these threes, and I just was like, oh my God, these things are incredible. He's like, yeah, there's nothing you can't make them do. Nothing.
Yeah. You can make them do pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted it to turn on your coffee maker in the morning, you could set it up.
I get that in the architecture, the way he was explaining the architecture, where it doesn't really, when you open it up, you have to have all this programming knowledge before it just comes out like a blank slate, and you have to add all that stuff in. Where a lot of the other systems, and I'll rattle off the ones that I've worked on, they don't have that. They come with a set architecture. Now you're customizing that architecture, and but in the simplex world, and obviously the Silent Night world, FIKE, all that good stuff, they all basically come out of the box knowing what they are.
Yeah.
But the 3 isn't that way, and that's what makes it so kind of customizable.
Yeah, the 3 is just a complete blank slate. You start from scratch. You have to tell it what it is. The only thing it knows is CPU. When you put a CPU in, it's like, I'm number 1. That's it. That's all it knows. That's literally all it knows. But then you have to tell it, like, no. You're in a network. You're not 1, by the way. You're number 5. Also, you're not actually a fire panel. You're an annunciator. You have to tell the system all of that fun stuff. But it's so fun, and I just really enjoy how customizable it is.
Nice.
And then it's also kind of like you have different editors that you can use. I've been using Gen's editor, and I know that there's other editing programs out there as well. You can use whatever, you can import it.
So that's not the standard ESD program? Is that a special?
It's a third party. It's a third party program that you can download.
Do that.
Yeah.
Wax eloquent. Tell me about this.
I think Notepad++ is another one that you can use as well. So
no kidding.
Yeah. So they're kind of geared towards that. So you don't ever really want to use Notepad because it's been known to add spaces into things, and they're kind of invisible and can sometimes mess up with your logic, your syntax. But I've always used Gen's editor, but it's really just like a notepad that has color codes for like your brackets. If you have a rule, you have to put brackets to name it, which basically if you bracket things out, the system ignores it, but you can put in notes like, this rule is for this. You can put like your thumbprint, if you will. You can leave notes, little legends and things like that, so that if somebody else programs it down the road, they can look back and be like, oh, okay, that this abbreviation means this, things like that. So a lot of times
so the logic in this machine is so you can leave your notes, and we talked about that right before the show, like where you can tell where Gary's programmed, and the way that he programs, and maybe the way I'm picking on Randy, but the way that Randy might program, or the way that Sean might program, or Bryce. So you can kind of see the logic because it's all unique.
Yeah.
Correct? Like this 3 here isn't going to match the 3 in this place over here because 2 different people could have programmed them, even though they do the same thing, and they're both UL listed to do what they do. Yeah,
even if the same person did 2 different programs, they might still be a little bit different, because a lot of things affects how you label things. And the way that the EST program works is it works off of labels. Okay. So you have the column in the program that is the label, is you can put qualifiers in there. Like you can make it say SMK for smoke detector, and then you can write your rule and say anything that has SMK in it does this. It activates an FSD, a fire smoke damper. It activates an air handler shutdown. It could be part of an AND group, like if you have a pre-action system and you have to have cross zoning and things like that, you can put devices into an AND group, and then make it say that you have to have 2 of these active. Any of these devices in this AND group, if 2 of them go active, then you set the output off. Things like that. And depending on the site, you might have site-specific abbreviations because it makes sense for that place.
Which makes sense. So exactly. that is a lot. That is kind of similar to Simplex, because we do the same thing. So if I have a building, and that building is, let's say, MRB, then we always start off our label with MRB. But
Correct.
the programming language is, basically the customizing is, you can either have it write it for you, but it has to be a specific way when it's written.
Correct.
So it'll say blank but blank but blank but blank but blank. And or and then when in my experience, like when I've worked with some of the really good simplex programmers because I'm mediocre and I've met good, and I'm not there yet because I'm not writing these things from scratch. I'm manipulating and customizing it for what we need for our specific functions. But when we bring in Ralph from Simplex, Ralph McRoberts, who I want to have on the show at some point, who is just a genius. Him and Brian Magnuson, all these guys that have worked for Simplex for years. These guys really, really know their stuff. And so they're doing kind of like what you're doing, but the architecture is pretty set. Like when we leave our notes, we have this little area. It's like, this is where your comments go. And I was talking to Ralph the other day. He goes, yeah, man, put in there what the hell you're doing. Like don't be shy. Like, why did you write this thing? What did you want it to do? Don't leave these little notes. So here I've been telling to students and technicians for years, leave crib notes of what you've done in the field. Yeah. And Ralph's like, leave crib notes of what you've done here. And so you've got the same thing in 3. You can just put the crib notes right in there.
You can leave notes for the next person. I've come across notes from 2016. Oh, this sprinkler zone got deleted, so the devices are now in this other zone. So it leaves crumbs for the next person who happens to be digging in the program and looking for, well, why did any kind of reason of why things changed? Well, they can find this note in the rules report, not the rules, excuse me, in the rules themselves. And, so and so left a note. This got deleted. It got rearranged so that now this zone sets it off. Okay, cool. That's awesome. That can then, open up a whole nother line of question to the customer of, well, why did this happen? What was the reasoning for it? Or, there was a project going on at the time and it changed everything. The walls changed. This pre-action system wasn't needed anymore. So now we moved it over here and to do this other thing.
Nice.
So you can do that. Not everybody does, but you can.
So, and there's no real like thou shalt, but it's all company wide. Like within Convergent, I'm sure you guys have your own standards that you do.
Yes, right.
And everybody sort of makes sure that there's nobody guessing at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah, we kind of have a thing of like Convergent likes to see things within reason and within customer specific requirements. This is kind of what we want to see, but really everybody's kind of left to do how it makes sense to them. Like the way I program is completely different than the way my colleagues, Dave Barrett, for instance, would program, or the way Gary programmed. Like I have my own little style. I like to have things in a specific order, like with the label. Like I wanted to have the address in it, and then the next thing I wanted to say is if it's a smoke or a heat, and then the next thing and the next thing. The label can be pretty long.
and that consistency. So we run into that too. I was programming today, and I was showing my apprentice that I'm trying to standardize some of the programs because we're adding radios and taking out dialers and doing some things. So I said I want this to all be the same so that anybody can see exactly what we've done.
Right.
And he was off for a couple of days last week, and I was noodling, just trying to figure this out. And I had 11 by 17 sheets of paper on my desk, and I'm writing on this furiously. And I don't have a whiteboard, a big enough whiteboard, so I'm writing on the window that overlooks like the helipad, going,
nice.
With a I don't know, one of those beautiful mind things where I'm writing on the thing with a dry erase marker, and people coming by going, I don't think you're sane. I'm like, no. I got to get this worked out. And I worked out all the logic, the ways I wanted it to go, and then sat down and actually did it. And got this thing all dialed in, and we went to test it, and it worked first time.
That's awesome. Like, such a great feeling.
And there's nothing better than that when you're like, phew. Okay, now that it works, so we know that it works, let's mirror this here. Let's make it the same everywhere.
But sometimes the trial and error can be kind of fun too. Like you're writing something, you're like, yeah, this should work. And then you test it and it does. And you should always test it.
You should always test it.
And never program and say, yeah, it's fine. And then I don't know anybody who does that, but just a good, rule of thumb, like always test it after.
Just make sure it's going to fire the way it should.
Exactly. I mean, it's only life safety,
It's only life safety. It's just a minor thing.
Yeah, but it's kind of nice to every once in a while have that, like, you're stumped because it should work. You're looking at it. You're running the report. You're compiling, and there's no syntax errors. Everything looks good, but it's not working.
Why is it blinking?
Yeah, exactly. So I find that fun. Like troubleshooting is kind of, I love it. I love troubleshooting. I like having to use my mind to figure things out. And I got to tell you, though, troubleshooting ground faults it took me a little bit to kind of get used to it. But like once you can troubleshoot a ground fault, you can troubleshoot just about anything.
You've got it. Yeah. Now then you can strap the black belt on because you've figured this out. Honestly.
Yeah.
It's that serious. I mean, because it is. I once troubleshot a ground fault on a notifier system with Bryce, and I was still a manager at the time, so I was constantly on the phone with some idiotic problem, and so I'm following him. Half my brain's following this kid, and the other half of my brain's on the phone trying to unsnarl some other bat squeezery, and he walks in to a room where they had just freshly cleaned the carpets, and it was so moist in this room. He made the connection. It's got to be, and he did do the isolation. He says it's got to be the smoke detector. He just, next thing I know, he's got a 12-foot ladder. He's up there, pulls it off. That was it.
Yep.
And I'm like, and how quickly he made the half-step jumps to figure out that was it. And he just happened to make all the connections right in front of me. So I was this observer watching my own person, my own employee, just waste this problem in just like that.
That's
nothing
awesome.
Flat. And I just was like, oh, I mean, I'm impressed. You know, it's that's why whenever he called me, it was bad. Like when he called me, I'm like, if Bryce can't get it, the hell is he calling me for? You know, that kind of thing. But
things got serious.
Yeah, things were serious. It's like, okay, I need your help. He and I were working on a 3 together. This homeowners association has it in this building downtown, and we go there together to work in this thing. And he's like, "Oh man, this thing's like a CPU1, which is one of the first version CPUs." And he goes, "If we change the revisions out to the current revision, it's not going to be compatible. This could very well fail." So we wrote this big proposal for this HOA, and they said, "Look, you got to do what you got to do. We got to get this thing up and running." And it had voice evac, and it had SAC modules in it, which are security. Yeah. And he's like, it definitely won't recognize those when we're done. So he did all the legwork to figure out what it took, and then I wrote the proposal, and we shipped it back to him, and the guy signed off on it.
Good.
And we went down and started looking at it, and that machine had been running continuously since like 2011.
Oh wow, yeah.
It had run without a failure, and without anybody doing anything to it, on its own, just running with same program, no modifications.
That's impressive.
And Bryce looks at me and goes, you could say a lot of things about Edwards. He says, but this thing has no one's touched it, Mike, since they turned it on and whatever. And one of our own guys programmed it from years ago. Like it was programmed by PSI, and then it went away and came back, to another client.
That's always fun, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's the same program. He goes, yeah, this is like Scott wrote this or something.
It's like it went on a little trip and then came back.
And sure enough, we did it, and one CPU, like the Annunciator CPU, went, it died, and the other one didn't, and within like 3 hours, we were back up and running. The guy goes, "That's it." I'm like, "That's it."
That's awesome.
He's like, "Huh, that was simple."
Yeah, and upgrading those panels can sometimes be a little bit of a doozy because you have to do them in a certain sequence. But that's impressive.
It was really
hearing
impressive.
that.
Yeah, I'm very simplex oriented, obviously because that's my employer now is OHSU. So, and it's all simplex up there except for a couple of FIKE panels, and that's what I cut my teeth on was that system. So that's the machine that I know.
That was your intro.
That was my intro, and
Nice.
and every time I compare anything, it's like, well, okay, this is what a 4100 does, and blah blah blah. So I never got a chance to. Matter of fact, I was scheduled to go to 3 school up in Seattle when I left.
Wait, they had school up in Seattle?
Yeah, they brought an instructor in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and they had them. They taught. Matter of fact, we sent Baker up there. Mike Baker went up there.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Is that the same class Cassie went to as well? Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I remember that now.
And
that
so she because she was in his class, and so but he taught Mirtone, which
I worked on one of those.
is not dissimilar from from
two,
an Edwards panel. It's like a 2, I think.
Yeah, it's close to a 2.
So he kind of already knew the logic in that. Anyway, I was scheduled to go there, and it just, my time was done. I needed to go elsewhere. So to me, I know a lot of different systems, but I know all these smaller systems like Potter and and Silent Night and stuff. But when it came to the big guns, just about the time I could have probably pulled the trigger on it, I was out.
Yeah.
So it's like I never really got a chance to. And part of me is like, I kind of wish I had. But then if I'd have it's been a waste of time and money. I wouldn't have.
That's kind of a bummer that you didn't get to learn it, but at the same time, it's a beast, and it's one of those you gotta use it when you learn it, because you do lose it over time.
That's what I sent a guy there, and he came back and he said, if we don't start using this, it'll fall out of our heads. Yeah. And I think he is right. Yeah.
I mean, I think the same can be said about a lot of stuff too. I mean, I went through AES training, but I've never installed one. And I think I've went through the menu on one of them, like might have been like a year or so afterwards. So
so that familiarity with the product line and keeping up on it, it's. I think you're right. I think it's very critical. I couldn't remember to sit down in front of a simplex panel in a program was like, oh, what am I doing here? Because it's this DOS. One of them is still DOS.
Oh my God.
When you go to work on a 41 Plus, it's like the blue DOS screen. You're like, oh my God.
It's like a blast from the past.
It is the blast from the past. And it's like, and I started going through it. The more I started doing it, the more I remembered, but it
comes back to you.
It does come back. But I was never like I was never the best at that. My specialty was the field kind of crap, like getting out and installing stuff in the field and coming back and then programming whatever little things I needed to. But I went down and worked on a system one time, and I couldn't get it to communicate correctly. We were putting AES radios in, and I couldn't get it to communicate correctly. And so you can without having to download the entire network, you can do minor changes to just the what we call custom control programming. And so I'm tweaking this custom control programming, but what I don't realize is it upticks the rev on the network. And so the guy from Simplex who does our work for us, Ralph, comes in and he goes, what the hell happened? We're like 10 revs higher. How could you have possibly downloaded this system 10 times? I'm like, no, I was like at the panel, making the modifications, testing it out to see if I could work it over and over and over again. And that kept he goes, okay, Don't do that anymore. Like let's figure out another way.
That's when you need a test bench.
That's when that you could make work for that. So it's like you live and learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you come out from behind a desk and then strap on a tool bag and go back out in the field, you're like, oh, look at all the changes out here. It's so different.
Yeah. EST has a similar thing where it anytime you save, it saves it as a new rev. So you have to be careful when you're making changes. And like if you have a program on your laptop and you're making changes to it, but somebody else has come along and made some changes, and then they left, usually there's like a thumb drive on site or something, or like some of these new document boxes have a thumb drive built in, so you just plug into the document box and put your program on there. You have to check and make sure that the download rev and the date matches, because if you download an older rev, the system does not like it.
Yeah, it gets
very upset.
It gets very upset. Have you had that happen?
I've had that happen. I've made mistakes. I can admit
You're
that.
the only one. What?
Someone's got to do it.
We've all done that.
That's how you learn.
It is how you learn, isn't it?
Oh yeah, trial and error. Yeah, it's just all part of it.
Well, and to me, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, and I think it was critical, is because I think women in this business, in this particular field, they're few and far between. I can rattle off half a dozen that I know, but I could rattle off 50 men that I know, and that's bat squeeze, okay? Because we need more women in this discipline. Period. Yeah. And then I want you to I want people to know, that this is a big deal to program a 3 and to work on a 3 in a international airport. That is not a small thing.
Sure
and so
anyone can do it.
To me, it's just it thrills me to it thrills me when I have women come through the program and make it all the way, and like Cassie, look at let's just pick on her for a second. Think of the enthusiasm that kid has, and now that they put her out at that small microchip plant out on the west side, that itty bitty place no one's ever heard of, she's hitting them out of the park out there.
I'm not surprised.
Not at all, right?
Not at all. She is a smart cookie.
Yeah. So to me, people seeing that and go, wait a minute, you don't have to be pigeonholed into a career that I could never be an electrician, or I can never go out and be a programmer. That's not true. That's just not true.
Right. No, you can totally do it. And I still to this day, like, whenever people find out that I'm an electrician, they're like, "Oh, you are?"
Right.
Whoa. And a lot of people are like, "That's so cool." And I've never gotten a bad reaction about it. But a lot of people are like, they don't expect it, and I'm like, why not?
Because it's out of the ordinary. Because it's literally, it's cookie cutter. Bearded guy. We're all out there. We're everywhere we look.
Yeah.
They're everywhere we look. And so it's like to see women, minorities, a diversity in this field, to me, is the future of what's going on. It's just the future of what's going on. And I know that for IEC and for JATC and all the groups that we work with, I know the numbers. I can see the folks coming through the program. It's like I told somebody the other day about a minority-owned business. We have a minority-owned business that does abatement for us up on the hill. And fantastic group of folks, And they, once they get into a place like this, they can hit, they have preference. They get preference points to help these small businesses become bigger businesses. And so, and I kind of appreciate that. Like I think that that's the right way to go. And I've partially owned a minority business, so it's like, it's been a part of my culture. So I like that anyway. So I just want to get that point out, that that's one of the reasons why I think that it's critical that you're here.
Yeah, I am absolutely thrilled whenever I see other women coming into the industry as well. I work with a couple of ladies at Convergent that are also technicians.
What?
There's
know. More?
It's so weird.
Who else? Because I know at least one of them.
Sarah Hall is one of them, and Renee. Renee also works out at the airport under the security group, but she does also know fire as well.
Nice.
So, wonderful ladies. I absolutely adore working with them.
Good.
And we make great teams whenever we do have to team up.
Good.
Not have to, but get to, because I actually really enjoy working. I enjoy working with anybody. I think it's great, and I feel like I'm a pretty easy person to get along with and whatnot. I like to have fun on the job, but I really enjoy working with them. I really loved working with Cassie when she was out at the port as well. So I kind of miss her.
I know, I do too. She was my student. She's always she has so much energy, and she brings so much energy to the room. That's nice.
Oh yeah,
it's nice to have her around for that.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not knocking all my other students. Please don't get offended at that. So you're local. You grew up here.
No, I did not.
From?
I'm from all over the place.
What?
I was born in the States, but my dad was in the military.
Really?
And so a very large chunk of my childhood was spent living in Germany. And my mother's German, so
oh, nice.
Yeah, we lived on a farm out there, and he commuted to base and did what he did. And so we spent a lot of time there, and then he was ultimately stationed back into the States, and so we lived in Michigan for a little while. And then my mom ended up working for Lufthansa Airlines, and she was stationed out here at the airport back when Lufthansa opened
No
for
kidding.
that, like, I think 5 years that they were out here, 5-6 years. And so I moved out here with her, and I ended up working for Evergreen Aviation, doing the paperwork.
Did you really?
I did, which is kind of funny because Evergreen Aviation was the outsource that Lufthansa used for like the ground control, like the baggage, moving the baggage and loading the cargo, because the Airbus that flew in had passengers and cargo. So I did all the paperwork for the cargo that came in and out. While at the same time going to ITT.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that during the day, and then at night I went to ITT 3 times a week. And that's where I met my husband as well.
Nice.
So that's how I ended up out here, but I've been out here since 2003, so a little bit. I've lived here longer.
Did you pick up some German while you...
Oh, yeah.
So you're fluent in German?
I am fluent, and I can still understand it, but it has been way too long that when I have to speak it in return, I stumble. So I can still understand it. I can say some things, but I can't hold a full conversation.
Well, we have at least one listener in Germany.
That's wonderful.
So
I love it.
I think it's awesome. I don't know how to say anything in German. So
Dankeschön.
There you go. There you go for our listener in Germany. We're super excited you're here. So Evergreen Aviation is, so you worked there for a couple of years then?
I worked for them for a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
So basically the entire time I was at ITT. And then I got hired at Convergent. So I quit Evergreen and started working at Convergent.
Dang.
Yeah.
So I was working out at the PAM Corp hangars. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, there was this group called PAM Corp that the state of Oregon kind of helped partner and build, and they built these 2 immense hangars out at the airport. And then the company had some sort of failing, and the state had some sort of failing, and the place got emptied. So I'm out there working on the sprinkler system, or the fire alarm system with the sprinkler system, and it was when I worked for Simplex. And one of the hangars was completely empty, which we tripped and flooded, but that's another story. And then the one to the south was completely chock full of aircraft, and I'm an aircraft nut.
Mm-hmm.
So I come walking through, I'm like, oh my God, this is a Messerschmitt, and there's a B-17G in there, and there's all these aircraft that I'm just like drooling over. I can't believe it. They're all they're beautiful. And eventually I find a guy on top of a P-38 Lightning, and that's a twin-boomed fighter plane from World War II. And so he's bounced around out there, and I'm like, hey man, what the hell's going on in here? He goes, these are all Evergreen Aviation planes. He goes, this is $20 million worth of plane I'm standing on.
Wow.
It's still got the superchargers on it that work.
Oh.
And I'm like, wow. So I take it to your mechanic, and he goes, yeah, I'm a former Navy aviations guy. I said, oh, I'm a former Navy electronic warfare guy, so that makes sense. So he's rapping back and forth. He goes, yeah, man. He goes, these are going to be in some museum at some point.
Mm-hmm. They should be.
And that's where they are. They're all now
nice
out at the Evergreen Aviation Museum. Full circle, I'm out there working for Western States, and we go into the Spruce Goose.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who was working at Western came from Simplex, and he said, oh, we put this fire system in there, and we couldn't screw it, glue it, or mark anything in the plane. And he goes, so we use cross popsicle sticks in between. I'm not lying to you. So,
I know. I've been in it.
You've been in it, right?
I've been in it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you after.
Stroke of brilliance. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
So Dave says, yeah, if you look in there, we use cross popsicle. I don't know who came up with that. It was Dave Keller or one of his.
A genius.
And so when I get there, I'm climbing all in that thing, all up in the tail. Oh, it's
phenomenal being in there.
So tell me your story about it.
Well, I've been in there. It's not much of a story, but it's test and inspect. We get the contract to inspect all of the Evergreen buildings down in McMinnville, including the 2 museums, so the aircraft and the water park. So basically all of the Evergreen buildings.
Nice.
This was before they went bankrupt and whatnot. So I got to be in the Spruce Goose, and we had to test all the devices there, and we had to be on a ginormous boom.
Did you do the boom, the 130 boom?
Well, yes.
I won't climb in that thing.
No.
So did you go up there and do it?
We had to, not for that.
Oh, man.
Because we were able to test the beam detectors a different way. We had the solar pole that you can extend, and so you kind of stand in a certain spot and test them that way. But I have had to be on that articulating boom lift and work on, I think it was some batteries that we had to replace that were really high up. And then the other way is to basically take the boom lift, and they give you a ride up to the roof on the outside, and you walk up the roof, and then there's a hatch that you can get in and walk in the catwalk up there. Don't look down.
Even if you're not afraid of... That I don't mind doing. I don't mind doing the catwalk.
Yeah.
I can do. But the boom,
yeah,
it's
so wobbly. Ugh. I'm not a fan of lifts in the first place. I'm not afraid of heights, but I don't like that wobbly feeling. That
unnerves me. Yeah, it unnerves me. The guy who was sent up there did that was my apprentice at the time. He now works for a company in Vancouver, and he no problem. Like completely no problem.
Wow.
Like he just went up and did it. Like, yeah, no biggie.
Wow, those are the kind of people I look up to when
I
it comes
do too.
to lift work. I'm like, you know what? You do you.
No, when I was in the Navy, I would climb a mast, strap off, and work up there, no sweat. Mm-hmm. If I had a big piece of metal that I was attached to, I could climb as high as you need me to climb.
Nice.
The first time I was working with a former SEAL, I was working for Simplex. This guy was a SEAL, and he had just got out of the Navy. So he was just this buff, triangular shaped, you know what those guys
like they come.
Like. Just handsome guy. And we're working in this little school in Kelso, and he goes, and I'm going up in one of those genie lifts, those little one-person genie lifts with the outriggers. Mm-hmm. I got up like 12 feet and just stalled. Yeah. And he's going, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm working through it." He goes, "Stop it." He starts shaking the thing, No. I'm like, "Mark, knock it off." He's like, "Get up there." He starts calling me all kind of names. He's laughing, right? Because these guys are not afraid of anything.
Oh, he was helping you.
Oh, yeah. So there were 35 devices up there. I did 25 out of 35, and I was at pucker factor 50 when I did the first one, and 50 when I left. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this is crazy. Mm-hmm. And he's doing the other 10, and he's laughing the whole time. I feel like he's like, you don't have to trust your equipment. You don't have to trust your equipment.
Sure.
And it took me forever to get to where I could kind of be comfortable in it. But when I saw those super high boom lifts, no bueno, can't do it.
They're a different animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had to use those genie lifts like you're talking about, getting into some really high atriums. Like they have VESDA units up above the ceiling, the false ceiling. So you have to drop the ceiling down. It's a metal grate ceiling. And you got to have your laptop with you. Well, you've been on those genie lifts. There's not a whole lot of room. No. So you're just like, you're in there and you're, holding on, and you're like, any sudden little movement, you're like wiggling back and forth. I'm like, this is how I go out.
This is it. This is how I die.
Yeah, exactly. And then miraculously you make through, and then you come back down. You're like, okay, it's done. It's such a relief hitting that ground.
I could now go back at because of all my experiences. I could now easily go back and do that gymnasium. I had no problem on lifts until I get about 35, 40 feet only on those extendable booms. As soon as they move them, I'm like, it's ridiculous.
And you're not supposed to drive the lift when you're up.
I know.
But I've seen people do that, and I'm like,
No. I know.
Not my cup of tea.
Not my cup of tea either. Well, I've gotten better at it.
Yeah.
But as far as being heights, well, I mean, we went to my wife and I went to the Excalibur. Mm-hmm. Have you ever been to the Excalibur in Vegas?
No. I got married in Vegas, but
Did you really?
I was at the top of the stratosphere. We got married way up there on the 106th floor, but not the Excalibur.
I had no idea that the thing was truly hollow. Mm-hmm. I saw it when I got there and went, wow. And you don't ride an elevator. It's like a Wonkavator. It kind of goes sideways. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not afraid of heights into this way. Mm-hmm. It's just another way that I'm afraid of them. So I come out, I'm like, wow, this is cool. I look around, my wife, she's gone. What the hell's going on? She's on the ground. She's literally
no.
Don't touch me.
Oh.
I'm going to, and she and I was like, and that's when I saw somebody with that, this is not like a joke fear. This is a real fear that you have to work through. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, you should I crawl? She's like, we're not staying here. I'm like, this is unsustainable. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow. And she wound up working her way through it.
Good.
But that initial thing when I'm like, wow, because you're like looking over the casino and how cool is this?
Yeah.
Hello?
That is awesome. That's how I found out that my sister-in-law was afraid of heights. I had no idea until we get up there and she's holding onto the wall like, what's wrong?
All right.
I'm afraid of heights. Oh my God, why didn't you say something? I had no idea.
I didn't realize that it would be so visceral until it hit me, and then and I can't look at somebody and laugh and go, well, you're being silly, because you're not.
Mm-hmm. No, it's serious.
Yeah.
I try not to make. Well, I don't have to try. I just don't make fun of people like that. I personally, I don't like spiders. Which is kind of a peculiar situation to be in sometimes when you have to work on fire alarm devices that are in creepy crawly spaces like a vault, for instance, an attic. I struggle with that a little bit, not gonna lie.
I was working at OSU, and one of my ex-apprentices who still works for PSI, I was down in a vault doing backflows. I'm a sprinkler guy too, a little bit, and I was down doing some backflow testing, and I'm trying to kill what I thought were hobo spiders. And I've come to find out they're wolf spiders, but I didn't know any better because I'm an idiot. So I'm like, oh! So I'm hitting this thing with hit it with a wrench. And he was laughing, and behind me, one skittered right behind my neck. And he goes, I didn't want to tell you because I think you're going to hurt yourself with that wrench. And he had the driest sense of humor. It makes me laugh just thinking about him. That's for you, Scott. So what is your husband in the industry, or what does he do?
He's not in this industry. You're gonna laugh.
No, I'm not.
He fixes copiers.
Oh no, I've done that.
I know.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, he's been doing it a little bit longer than what I've been doing.
No kidding. Oh, so he's really into it then.
Yeah, he likes it.
Can I ask what brand?
He works on a lot of Konica, Minoltas, Ricos, Sharps, things like that. He's gotten trained on some of those really big production ones, like that work in the print shops now, Colorado's, but not Xerox, things like that.
No
but
kidding.
like he kind of started out with like the little machines that do like the table. He's probably gonna correct me when he hears this because he's waiting for this podcast to come out. He's like, so when do we get to hear it? Anyway, so I think he started with like the smaller ones, like the fax machines and things like that, and then kind of progressed to the bigger ones that are in the offices and the
It's a good gig.
Yeah.
Some of the best technicians I met were doing copiers. It was really incredible technology.
I feel like he is using some of the troubleshooting skills a lot more than I am, because he's still out there, measuring the voltage and resistance with his meter on the boards, whereas in fire alarm a lot of times we don't have to troubleshoot to that level anymore because they're built to be replaced.
Yep.
But not so much in the copier world. They
not at all.
they still send things back to the manufacturer where they fix it and send it back out. They refurbish it.
And it's electromechanical because you've got all the clutches.
Yeah.
So you've got these inverter drivers driving these clutches, which are driving these things, and then these PT discs, which are counting out how many pulses the paper is coming, and the paper has to be, pushed up against a set of rollers and buckled at a certain. Oh my! The whole thing was insane.
Yeah, and you got to watch out for the thickness of the paper because depending on the setting, you can change it. If it's too thick, it's gonna
crappy paper.
Crappy paper.
People they put it on cement. You're like, no, your paper can't be there. It's got to be off the floor. What's wrong with you?
Right, exactly.
And even the cut. When I bust open a ream of paper, people laugh because I'm all violent with it,
Yeah.
But I remember guys when I worked for Pacific looking at the paper and going, this is cut the wrong way. You got to make sure it goes in the right way. I'm like,
Pacific
Office.
That's who he works for.
Yeah, POA.
Yeah, POA.
Yeah.
So you know where it's at.
I know exactly where it's at. I probably may know him. I'll ask you his name when we get off here.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, if I don't know him, I probably can figure out who he is. The guy, one of the guys there who was the trainer when I started, his name was Steve Bray, was hands down making technicians, not forcing, I don't mean to say this in a bad way, but he would foster competition to make people learn.
Yes.
And to want to do better.
Good.
And I can say a lot of things about the copy industry, but that guy and several other people, who run that company made sure that their copier technicians were absolutely, especially when it came to Sharp, were absolutely unequivocally good at what they did. Mm-hmm. And Brian, one of the guys that was there when I was there, was a bass player too. They have a lot of musicians there. A lot of musicians fall into the copy industry. I asked one. I said, "What?" I said, "Will you play guitar?" He goes, "We all play something." Mm-hmm. He goes, "All of us are failed musicians, and this is why we're here, because we can't get our bands to work."
Yeah. So you know of the annual service weekends and all the times
I competed in them.
Did you really?
In the beginning, yeah. When I was working there, because when I worked there, they were by Sunset High School.
Okay.
Off of Science Park Drive.
Okay.
And Newsom was like the guy in the office down, up in the upper area. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's a
small world.
It's a small world.
Such a small world.
And the guys I was with, the people I was teching with, some of them were hands down. Brian Richardson's the one that comes to mind. That guy was, he was, when I say getting Zen, with the fire, okay, that came from him.
Really?
Yeah, because he would come up to a Sharp, like a 9800 or a 9750, and we'd cheat the interlocks, open up the door, and he would sit cross-legged and watch it. And I would go,
"What are you doing?
What are you doing?" He goes, "Shh, listen." You got to be kidding me, man. He goes, "No, I'm not kidding you at all." Boom, there it is. Do you hear it? It just jammed. And it, and he was right, because the machine stops, and then he would begin to unfold what it was, and I just was in awe, and I stole that getting Zen from Brian.
That's awesome.
I stole that.
I really liked that episode. I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
Doesn't it?
It does, absolutely.
And he would collect his thoughts, and he didn't let things get in his way, and he just would collect his thoughts, and he was very methodical, very professional. Yeah, I really have a soft spot in my heart for him and his wife. They were really nice people.
Wonderful.
Oh, man, what a small world.
Absolutely. I wanted to tell you real quick about women in the industry as well. When I went to ITT, I was one of 4 or 5 other ladies in that class. And by the time the second quarter hit, we were already half. And then by the time the third quarter hit, 2, and she dropped out halfway through, and I was the only one left.
You're the only one left.
And that set not the bar, it set how things were going to be basically all the way through until I got my journeyman's license, because almost just about the entire time that I was in the apprenticeship program, I was the only woman in all of those classes. Yeah. Except for one. And I think it was codes with Dave Gilson. Yeah.
See?
And for the first couple of years for my continuing education, also no other women. Now I'm starting to see it more and more. There's a lot of ladies.
There's a lot of women in it.
And I think it's awesome.
I think it's awesome.
And we have a good time.
Yeah, I think it's awesome too. One of the best, and I think I probably said this in a previous podcast, but one of the best instructors I ever had for continuing ed was a woman who'd lost her vision, lost her ability to see details. Okay. So she was a master electrician. Her father owned a shop in Silverton. She ran that shop when he retired.
Oh, cool.
And so she was just, she was super good. She came walking into this room full of men mostly. I think there may have been one woman in there, but she was a whole bunch of us knuckle draggers at OHSU, and she passes out toys. She had 4 totes on a hand truck. One of them was full of toys. So she hands the tote out, and she says, "Everybody pick a toy. I don't care which toy, whatever toy you want." So I picked out like Gumby. So she says, "Put it on your desk." And then she starts talking, and immediately she's got all our attention, and she's showing us examples of failures, and and she told our story, and her story, and then like 10, 15 minutes later, she says, "Okay, now look around the room." And sure enough, there's 4 or 5 guys sitting there playing with their toy while they're listening to her. They're not watching her. They're just looking at their toy, playing with her. And she said, that is a kinesthetic learner. Each one of you who is touching your toy and playing with it are kinesthetic learners.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And she goes, there are audio, visual, and kinesthetic learners. Stole that, put that right on the slide as the first slide I teach it's every single class. If you sit there and doodle, I don't care. Like you could draw, because that's what I do in meetings. I sit there and draw things out. That's important for you. And she says, that is enabling their mind to listen to what I'm saying. And then they're manipulating and seeing it in their head. Mm-hmm. And my jaw hit the floor.
Yeah.
I just went, oh. And I don't even know her name. I just know that when I left that continuing ed, I can still tell you some of the things that she taught. And it was mostly about grounding and bonding, right? It almost always is.
Yeah.
It never is low voltage stuff.
That's a fun course to take, though. I've taken it a few times because I needed the credits, but I enjoy sitting through that class, even though it's not something
stuff we're never going to use.
No, but I like learning about it. I think it's great.
So do you have a Washington license too, since you live there? So you have an ELO6, and you're going to have a nice set, I take it?
I have a nice set 3.
What?
Yeah.
Outrank me. So together we're nice set like 5.
There you go. Cool. Eventually I'll probably go for my 4, but I'm kind of...
Please do.
Yeah.
That's rarity. You've got to get your 4. You've got a 3. So you've already proven that you can design and put... Right, and 4 is the projects, right?
4 is the actual project. I think you got to have a start to finish.
And that.
I think by now I can, yes.
Yeah, you've got to get your 4.
Yeah, I will.
That'd be so cool.
I just got my 3 at the end of last year, so.
Don't stop.
Well, when I get 4, then I have to, because there's no 5.
Not yet. No, but I was talking to John, a friend of mine from PSI, John Marchetti, he's a 4, and PSI has a lot of 4s working for him. They're heavy with 4s, and he says I'm going to get another one, and it's in ECS. It's basically DAS systems because that's the up and coming thing is DAS. Right?
Gotta have it.
OHSU has this DAS system installed that is, stellar. We monitor it for them. We monitor it ain't working kind of points, right? Contact closures.
Oh, yeah.
But ITG runs the thing. And wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's a new NICET level or discipline besides for that. So there's test inspect and then fire alarm and now there's this.
Are there jurisdictions that are driving that as well, or is that more like if you're interested and you want to know more about it and you want to become kind of more official?
I don't know that, but I'm going to take a wild guess that there are jurisdictions driving it.
Good.
Because there's gaping holes in the testing of these things. In any jurisdiction, you can see where they put their enforcement and where they don't. You know, but you put these things in, and the particular system that PSI was marketing, I read how it specs because I'm a radio nut, and I was blown away by what you could do with it. You could balance it, and it made sure that it knew because if you bring a radio system, if you bring a radio into the front door of a place that's got a DAS system, and you hit both that system and the repeater, it can cause feedback. Oh. And so in the RF world, we would what we call pad down or attenuate, so you get further in the building, and you have to find that happy medium. If you just or the original DAS systems didn't do that. And so they may have had that engineering, but they weren't installed that way. Gotcha. And so the system that they were doing for PSI was had all kind of fancy stuff. But this guy went out and went to school on it and mastered it, just figured it out.
So how do you find that sweet spot for it? Do you have an antenna you walk around with an indicator and you're like, okay, this is better than over here? Yeah,
you would have to compare, and I don't know exactly the tool that they're using, but you'd have to look at your signal to noise ratio and how much signal you're getting in and how far in the building, and then how much your DAS system is putting out, and then balancing that so that there's a cutover point that is, far enough in that you don't get that. But the system, and I don't even know the brand name of it, but they're pretty cool stuff. Like as a radio guy, I'm like, oh wow, I could totally get into that. But
how do you feel about cellular dialers?
I like them, but the fact that they sunset over and over and over. I like IP dialers. I think IP dialers are the answer to a lot of people's problems because they're so cheap.
Yeah.
But once again, you can't put an IP dialer in a hospital network.
No.
You're not in control of that firewall. So then you're stuck with cell or radio.
Because you can't get phone lines unless it's like a very specific circumstance. You're way out there and, nowhere where there's no cell tower for like 50 miles.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're stuck. So I think that each technology has its advantage, but the idea that we were going to go off phone lines completely is malarkey.
It's a little scary too.
It is, but it can't happen. Like you can't go to Warrington. There's no coverage in Warrington if you don't have phones.
Yeah, you got to have that copper.
You got to have the copper. So there has to now we got those 4 technologies out there. Of all of them, I like radio the best because I'm a radio nut. But
and you can build that mesh network with those and make it stronger. So you have less points of failure.
I agree. And it doesn't. You don't have to keep upgrading the technology. That's the thing that sold us on it. Where if I put in a Cellcom, now we're going to sunset 4G and go to 5. Now we're going to sunset 5G.
That's a little frustrating.
That is the part that was heartache for me. But everything's going on the cell phone or the web.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What do you think about them?
I think they have their purposes. Obviously, when you're in a city, you have a better chance of having a good signal. But I've run into situations where, like out at the coast, they're installing a cellular dialer, and you have great signal until someone parks a lift right in front of it.
Really?
And I'm like, that's kind of sketch.
That is kind of sketch.
So,
So that means that they're
like
so
when they
far
work.
away. They're so far away from the antenna
Yeah.
that amount of metal would block the signal versus
a lift, like you'd think that it would just go through.
No, because when you're closer to the antenna, you get multipath to get to
exactly.
it. But when you're far enough, then it's like light. It's got one shot. And that's
exactly. Oh, what about fiber? How do you feel about fiber?
I love fiber.
I am learning so much about it right now.
Because you're putting the backbone in, right?
Well, no, we are reconfiguring because the network that we're working on right now is a very large network. We've got 50 plus panels. Some of them are ghost nodes, but still, we still have an actual count of 50 plus panels, and we are breaking it apart so that the outer buildings are on their own network, and then the cluster of buildings on the main campus are on their own other network, and then they are connected with a switch network. So we got switches in.
Because I remember looking at that architecture when I was manager there and going, I don't think I understand all this, but it makes sense because like QTA and all the quick turnaround, all those other outside buildings being on there and not bogging down the network. And when you it's going to cut the download time in half. When PSI and Convergence first started going out there, the average download time was 8 to 10 hours. Yeah, I remember that.
And we've worked on that network so intensely that we've been able to get the download time down to 3.5 to maybe 4 hours, which is a significant improvement. And a lot of that was really just going through all the locations and cleaning the fiber ends.
Oh, really?
We're using a scope
to get more throughput. No kidding.
Because over time they get a little grungy and stuff, depending on where the panel's located and how much it's exposed to things like dust and buildup and stuff like that. Because it gets into those panels. It's electronics. Electronics attracts dust. So they can get a little grungy, especially if they haven't been touched in 10 years. And so you're going through and you're using your scope, which is super cool. I love using the scope.
So it's like a optical time domain reflectometer, or what is it? Or is it just it tells you your data throughput? What's your scope?
It's just a microscope, and you hook.
Oh,
yeah,
it's that kind of scope.
It's just super low tech. Like you push a button and it turns on a light so that you can actually see the surface of the fiber.
No,
I should have brought it. I didn't think about it. But yeah,
I'm serious. So you could just see the end of the.
Yes.
See how much of a
so you can
diphthong I am. I don't even know that. because I don't do that kind of work.
Oh, it's so
you
fun.
can see it?
I didn't either until I started going to the site and doing this work there. So really, like, fiber is something that I'm learning about, and I'm totally geeking out on it.
No kidding.
But it's so we go to all these panels, and each panel, depending on, it's got 4 strands minimum, because all the panels are connected with fiber. And so you've got your data A in and out, and then your data B in and out, right? So you got 4 strands minimum. If you have audio, you have 2 additional strands, one for the audio in and audio out. And you can also do it like single mode and multi-mode. Like, you can use the panels to switch from one to the other media. But so all we did was we just went to all the panels, and we would look at the microscope and see, oh yeah, this one's pretty clean. And we would still have like the little clicky pen to clean it. But if it was really grungy and dirty, we had these just isopropyl alcohol and a wipe, and we would clean it off and then look at it again and say, yeah, it's much cleaner now. And then we would connect it. And then we had another contractor with us as well who was certified, Corning certified, because the port doesn't allow us to touch the actual fibers in the network rooms. We can touch the fibers at the panels, but not in the network rooms. And so they would go and clean them there. And then there was a couple of strands that we found were bad. They were just so bad that they weren't allowing the data to pass through anymore, or not properly. And so we would replace those jumpers, and then, oh, look, this network instability is now stable.
And so because they were dirty, it would slow the throughput, and the system would just tell you, look, I'm having a hard time getting this mail across, so to speak.
Basically, yeah. The system would get really cranky, and it would give you network COM faults for all the panels. And if it did it enough, it kind of would turn into like a runaway and go into a network overflow. And then, oh, look, now you're on class B.
Wow.
Because it's class A out there.
So our network uses copper, and it runs at a whopping 57K.
Nice.
It's a token ring network. I'm not kidding you.
Oh, cool.
I'm not kidding you. It is still...
Copper's nice.
It's a pretty big network. I mean, it's not like 50 nodes, but it's essentially the same. But ours are kind of broken up different. But
copper's great.
It is really cool. But you don't think of, because where you're sending audio so that the same audio message is sent throughout the airport. Ours is not. Ours is, we have some buildings, like you're lucky. Get a little monkey hitting a can with a hammer. Here, get out. Because you've got all these buildings that are old, and the modern simplex stuff is all addressable now. So it's like, oh, you want to turn the signals on? You just tell them.
And simplex has addressable NAC devices
Addressable
too.
NACs, yeah.
Do you have those out there?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
that's a game changer.
Oh, I 100% believe that.
I've when I was teaching fire, I tell people, now there's always some exceptions to the rule. Simplex is that exception. Here's your addressable output device, and it has its own SLC. It's not like on the initiating side. It's actually got its own.
It would need to be. Yeah. I think that it would get really, convoluted if it was mixed.
And I've not worked with it much, but they came to do sound floor above and floor below programming on the main hospital, and the guy who Ralph, the guy who did that programming, did it in less than 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, because
such a massive system?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because the way that, we use Dynalectric for most of our installs out there, and the same guys that I was there before with, when they were like just turning out or still apprentices, are now running the show. So they all know me, right? They're like, oh my God, he's back, but he's older.
They found their calling.
They found their calling. And you open up the panels, and it's just like... I am impressed. I mean, because what they've had to troubleshoot, and they're as good at troubleshooters as we are, if not better. And they know where all the dead bodies are buried. I had a door circuit fail, and I stood around and I went, okay, I got to go figure out how this thing's all laid out. And I try to get the pictures, the drawings, and I can't find them because I'm a nut. And so I called Dinah down, and the guy goes, "It's right here. I'll show you." And
photographic memory.
No, because all he does is work on it. He goes, "We made this really simple, man. Here's the power supply. Here's the relays. Oh, look, blown fuse."
Oh, yeah.
And like he took me to the problem in less than 2 minutes, and I went, well, we got to figure out why we blew the fuse. So we figured out why we blew the fuse, and that was it. Game over. And he goes, I says, it's like this, and every floor is like this everywhere you go. It's the same way. And then I was able to get the drawings and figure out, because I'm not technology challenged, but things have changed so much, and everything is so connected up there that everything happens through your phone or through an iPad, and you're like, well, here I am. They say we're paper plans, and they're going, paper? The hell's paper? What is that?
Oh, I remember writing service tickets on paper.
Yeah.
On the carbon paper.
The triple.
So you would give the customer the white copy, and the yellow copy would go to your coordinators.
Goldenrod.
Yeah.
It wasn't even yellow. Where's the goldenrod copies?
Yeah. And then the pink one stays in your book so that you can go through. And
we're dating ourselves.
Yeah, I know. I miss it. I really liked physically writing down stuff. When I did my test and inspect, I came up with this format. It was just an Excel sheet with like the borders, and then I'd say this is the address column, this is the type column, this is I don't remember how detailed I got now. It was but I hand wrote everything down, like every single smoke detector that came in. I wrote down the address and all that fun stuff in the order that it came in.
You could get it in the order that made it right in your head. So postal or MPS.
Yep.
This address.
Exactly. And I did that it doesn't matter what system it was, because it was intended to work with whatever system you had.
It makes sense.
And I really enjoyed doing that.
So when I was inspecting, I would go in, at, or by. It's either in a room, by something, or at a location. And I said, don't put corridor. Use hall.
Depending on where you're at, you're going to have a lot of corridors.
Will you stay around and hang out with us and do a round table?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I could talk to you for another hour. I swear to God. But
we have a lot to talk about.
Somebody's trying to throw something at my head from the booth there. So let's we'll go ahead and close it down.
Thanks for listening to the Halfwatt Podcast. We always want to hear from you, and we encourage you to email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with questions or even your own stories. Funny, crazy, or praiseworthy, we want to hear it all. You can follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod to stay up to date on our feed. And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And share us with a friend, the best way to help us grow. The Halfwatt Podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios.